So ICD is involved in a lot of developments across Australia, Melbourne, Sydney. Let's start with what you're working on and what you just completed in Melbourne, rather, the EQ Tower. Tell us about that project and why it's so significant.
Sure, definitely. Well, EQ Tower is a beneficiary of generous planning in Melbourne, and what it really meant is we're able to put greater density on a CBD plot, which allowed us to create affordable housing, yet without the compromise on the quality that we developed. It allowed us to put greater setbacks on the tower itself, allowing for future-proofing of aspect for our purchasers. We're able to create significantly more amenity within the tower itself, 2 levels to be precise, and 14 different types of amenity to, again, future-proof the investment for our purchasers.
How did that allow you to get more affordable housing into the project? And does that serve as a model at all? Because keeping cities affordable is a very tough topic, especially in cities like Sydney.
Sure, definitely. I guess one aspect of it was there were no minimums on apartment sizes. There's in planning frameworks, there's usually a lot of, it's usually quite critical on size requirements. But we had quite a number of apartments at 40 square metres, where typically sub 50 is the taboo. But at 40 square metres and an average square metre rate of 9,400, the difference in 10 square metres is $100,000, a significant hit on affordability. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that enabled us to keep the apartments affordable, and I guess a greater variability in a variety in product. The greater variety in product really, it was interesting to see that there was significant take-up. In fact, it was some of the more popular apartments, both from a purchaser point of view as well as rental demand.
Was that a surprise to you?
No, not really. We know that, especially within Melbourne CBD, within a 2K radius, you have 2 of the world-class universities and significant employment opportunities for young professionals. So we kind of expected that that there'll be quite a fair bit of take-up from students and young professionals looking for more economical dwellings.
So Melbourne right now is in the middle of kind of a reinvention of its downtown. There's the huge transit project, the Metro Tunnel, which is putting some transit underground, building a bunch of new stations. How do you think that's going to impact what's happening in the city? And do you have any concerns about the scale of the change there and how the city might change?
Yeah, it's really exciting actually. Past both of the train stations that they're developing as we speak. Hopefully it's not going to be as long a project as it is in Sydney and as it's disruptive. But what it's definitely going to encourage is a lot of new entrants into the CBD and inner ring, looking for convenience and access to public infrastructure.
And so you as a developer, how do you see that opportunity playing out? Are you interested in what sort of projects are you going to be delivering as a result of that change?
100%. We are extremely encouraged by this and we'll be looking for and see there's a great future for high density, both in the CBD and the inner ring. So we'll be definitely looking for projects. We kind of, we see there's also a greater trend towards mixed-use development, where there's opportunities to see residential, commercial, retail and other mixes all coexisting and benefiting from one another.
You're working on a project in Sydney now. Tell us about that.
That's kind of in line with what we just mentioned about mixed use. It's a great opportunity for us to work with the historical club, the City Tattersalls Club, close to 120 years of history, and They are well located in the centre of Sydney CBD along Pitt Street, and what the opportunity for us is to really see to assist the club moving forward and continuing its livelihood by repositioning both the club and its image, as well as its income streams by diversification into hotel, as well as us being able to develop a residential component above. And what's really exciting about the mixed use concept is you've got a club which has historically always had a gym and restaurants to service its members. It now can leverage off hotel and residential users as well to see greater utilisation, efficiency and economic benefit back to those businesses.
Yeah, as you're doing more and more mixed use high rises, what are the challenges with that as a developer, since you're not just delivering one kind of space, but you need to deliver a unified project? How do you negotiate all the different uses? Yeah,
definitely. It is a challenge. I think that it's a combination of separation and also coexistence, where it's expected that there's a split of interactions. You will have separate entrances and all that, but there also is ability to coexist, where the residential users will benefit from being able to access restaurants that have been created for commercial use or for the club.
For these two cities that we've been mostly talking about, Melbourne and Sydney, what do you think the biggest challenges are over the next, let's say, 25 years? And as a developer, what's your role in helping solve those?
As two of the most popular cities for livability, I think we're going to be seeing an influx of new migrants and population growth, and
something that's already happening. I think 100,000 people a year new into Sydney.
That's correct, and similar to Melbourne as well. And really, the real challenge is for us to be able to keep up with that demand by creating enough supply. And what is going to be a real telling point for us is how we go about creating that supply. Is it going to be in high density, which I believe is the right approach, as it would reduce the strain off existing infrastructure, and reduce the need for planning for new infrastructure, road infrastructure, to access residential subdivisions further out.
Sure, but it's a trade-off because you don't have to go as far out if you're more dense, but then you have more demand on that transit there, on the amenities that are already in that area, on affordability for sure.
Correct.
So how do you negotiate that?
Yeah, I think again that comes down to efficient planning of the social infrastructure as well. A greater sort of focus on trains and trams, as well as bicycle amenities as well, which Melbourne and Sydney haven't been as well focused and planned on that type of infrastructure.
Alternative transit.
Alternative transit, where if you go to a lot of European cities, there's a significant focus on that, and it encourages people to take those modes of transport.
Are there any policies that promote density that you think Melbourne and Sydney should be considering that they're not?
That's interesting. I guess having more flexibility on minimums. So I guess thinking about minimum size apartments, as well as the requirements for amenities such as car parks and balconies. A lot of the stigma is around needing to ensure apartment sizes are sufficient, also looking at not impacting other other local apartments and residences with car parking. But the more and more we encourage walkable cities, the less and less there's a need for that.
So I'm hearing you say maybe less requirements for parking, require less parking for each individual project, and then also you said stigmas around the size of apartments, so more micro apartments, or what do you mean?
Yeah, I think the stigma with micro apartments is that micro apartments equals bad design, but there are quite a number of examples, especially in more developed high-rise or high-density economies of Asia, that have demonstrated that micro apartments can be very livable.